Welcome to the Authority Architect. Authority is not built through noise. It emerges when knowledge becomes clear, structured, transferable, and discoverable by both people and machines. We are living through a fundamental shift in how expertise gets found, valued, and trusted. Artificial intelligence is changing what recognition means and who gets it. But algorithms don't replace human judgment, they amplify it. The professionals who understand both will own the conversation. The Authority Architect is the show for those professionals. With your host, Sean Dorff. What you're about to hear is a direct address from Sean Dorff, framework creator, strategist, and founder of the Authority Bridge. Over 4 decades working with subject matter experts, Sean identified a single structural problem that explains why exceptional expertise stays invisible in the market. This is not about marketing. It is not about your pitch. It is about the architecture underneath everything else and what it actually takes to build it. Here's Sean.
The paradox of the master practitioner. Here's the pattern I've watched repeat across every domain I've worked in. 15, 20, 30 years of genuine expertise. Outcomes that no one else in the room can replicate. Client sessions that people describe as transformative, sometimes life-changing, and yet systematically invisible in the market, dependent on word of mouth. Unrecognized beyond the immediate room. That is the paradox of the master practitioner, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the work. The predictable costs of unstructured expertise. When expertise has no external structure, the costs are completely predictable. They follow a cycle. You explain your methodology from scratch on every single discovery call because it exists nowhere else. That creates fatigue and it creates inconsistency. Your clients experience transformation but cannot articulate what you actually did, so referrals stall. That's referral friction. Your content performs as isolated information rather than compounding authority. And because your distinctions exist nowhere permanently, you default to billing for time, not for the intellectual capital you actually deploy. Discovery call fatigue, referral friction, scattered content, time-based pricing. These are not separate problems. They are one cycle with one structural cause. This is not a communication problem. I hear it constantly. I just need to get better at explaining what I do. Or, I need a better copywriter. Better explanations will never fix the absence of structure. You can refine your elevator pitch endlessly. You can hire the best copywriter alive. But if the work itself has no permanent, external form, if there is no underlying architecture, a slicker pitch means you are delivering an empty promise more eloquently. You are still starting from zero in every single conversation. This is an architectural problem. And architectural problems require architectural solutions. The Codification Gap. I call this the Codification Gap. The Codification Gap is the structural absence of external, legible forms for internal expertise. Look at this diagram. On the left, internal expertise, fluid, powerful, producing real results. On the right, market legibility, what the market can read, reference, and price. Between them, a chasm. Expertise that exists only inside client engagements cannot be referenced. It cannot compound. It cannot travel. The music is there, but without a recording, it never leaves the room. The market cannot price what it cannot read. Look at these 2 lines. Time-based billing, the flat line stays flat regardless of how much structural legibility you build. It is a ceiling with no floor. Codified intellectual property, the curve compounds. The more legible your architecture becomes, the more the market's perceived value of your work increases. Not linearly, exponentially. When your distinctions exist nowhere permanently, the market defaults to pricing your time, not your transformation. The curve tells you exactly what becomes possible when you close the gap. The Expertise Architecture Matrix. This matrix shows you exactly what changes when the structure is in place. The unstructured practitioner prices by time, the codified authority prices by intellectual property. The unstructured practitioner produces outcomes that are hard to articulate. The codified authority operates from a methodology that is easy to point to. The unstructured practitioner's content gets consumed as isolated information and forgotten. The codified authority's content gets referenced as a citation asset, meaning others use it to make their own arguments. And the most important shift, instead of pitching from scratch on every call, the codified authority arrives to a conversation where their frameworks have already been evaluated. The prospect shows up ready. Building the legible foundation. So what does this foundation actually consist of? 4 components. Each one is specific. Each one is testable. You either have it built or you don't. This is not a philosophy. It is not a rebranding exercise. It is the architecture that makes your internal mastery readable to the outside world. 4 pillars. 4 corners of the foundation. Let's walk through each one. Component 1. The independent framework. The first component is an independent framework, a structure that exists entirely outside of you, documented, named, transferable. Someone should be able to look at a single page and describe your basic approach to a colleague without you in the room to translate it. Visible, pointable, referenceable. Those 3 words are the test. If your prospect can't point to your framework before the conversation begins, you don't have an independent framework yet. You have an approach that lives entirely inside your head. Component 2, the staged methodology. The second component is a staged methodology, a predictable territory with defined boundaries, named phases, specific outcomes at each stage, proprietary language that carries your fingerprint, not generic words like discovery or strategy. When prospects can evaluate the entire journey before they enter it, the anxiety of the unknown disappears. They are buying a logical progression, not trusting a reputation they can't quite articulate. And clients inside the work always know their exact coordinates. They know where they are, where they've been, and where they're going. That is what a staged methodology creates. Component 3. Named distinctions. The third component is named distinctions, ideas that carry your exact fingerprint, not borrowed frameworks with your spin, not standard industry language. Terminology that originated in your specific practice and belongs to you. When I named the Codification Gap, I claimed ownership of a specific territory. Every time someone uses that term in a conversation, they are citing my thinking. They validate my authority every time they use my vocabulary. Proprietary terminology forces the market to cite your thinking. That is the raw material of intellectual property, and it compounds every time it travels. Component 4. The compounding body of work. The fourth component is a compounding body of work. And compounding is the operative word. Every article, every tool, every keynote connects back to the named framework at the center. Not as isolated insights, as rooms in a house that already exists. The Unstructured Practitioner writes a brilliant piece on leadership on Tuesday and a great post on team dynamics on Thursday. Neither piece builds on the other. The market's attention dissipates. When the central framework exists, every new piece of content builds mass on what came before. Recognition accumulates. Authority compounds. The work stops starting over. The mechanics of authority. When this foundation is complete, the mechanics of the business change entirely. Content becomes a citation asset. Others reference it to build their own arguments, which means your thinking travels further than you do. Clients arrive pre-evaluated, they've studied your framework before the first conversation, so you're never pitching into a blank slate. Pricing shifts from time to intellectual capital because the client isn't buying your hours anymore. They're investing in the architecture you built, and expertise becomes readable. The legibility chasm closes. What was invisible becomes a structure the market can see, reference, and price accurately. The structural implication. You have the results. You have the methodology. You have frameworks operating in every engagement producing outcomes no one else replicates. The constraint is not your expertise. It is the absence of the architecture that makes your expertise legible. I want you to sit with one question before we close. Think about the best result you delivered for a client recently. If a complete stranger had to describe the specific mechanism of how you achieved that outcome without you in the room, what words would they use? This is a solvable problem, not a personal failing, not a tactical one, an architectural one.
bringing expertise into form. The Authority Bridge. That was Sean Dorff, founder of the Authority Bridge. Across 4 decades in strategy, education, publishing, and coaching, Sean has mastered the art of seeing expertise operating below the level of language and bringing it into form without reducing its complexity. The Authority Bridge exists for subject matter experts who recognize their invisibility as a structural problem requiring a structural solution. If what you heard today named something you've been carrying but couldn't articulate, the next step is the conversation. You'll find Sean at theauthoritybridge.com. This has been The Authority Architect. We'll see you in the next one. You've been listening to The Authority Architect with Sean Dorff. In a world where both people and machines decide who gets recognized, clarity isn't optional, structure isn't optional, and neither is the work of making what you know visible to the world that needs it. If today's episode moved something for you, share it with someone who's ready to hear it. Leave a review and come back for the next one. Because authority was never missing. It was waiting to be revealed, one episode at a time. See the show notes for more information or visit www.theauthoritybridge.com.